Conservatives are just leftists with a 10-year delay in between, and I challenge you to name just one thing which they manage to conserve. Nothing. Because the cycle always goes like this. Progressives push society 10 steps to the left. Then conservatives start complaining like, oh, this is bad and we promise to reverse it. But when they finally get elected, they don't fix anything. Instead, they just do nothing until society slowly becomes used to this new progressive bullshit. And once it became normalized, the entire cycle starts from scratch. But why are conservatives unable to conserve? It turns out that they are not actually right-wing and they still see the world through the lens of liberalism. They think like liberals and they use liberal terminology to express their thoughts. But if you're trapped inside such a worldview, you simply will not be able to find arguments against, let's say, marriage equality. But I don't have a problem with that, I just don't like trans. I tell you, the very same guy 5 years from now will say, but I don't have a problem with trans, I just don't like whatever the next thing will be. All because his liberal mindset prevents him from expressing his thoughts during a debate. And now the only thing his opponent has to do is to call him a transphobe or a racist. And then the conservative will spend an entire decade trying to prove him wrong. But if we push it too far, there will be backlash and we lose. Yeah, but do you know who is not afraid of going too far? The left. Because for them you can never go far enough. They live in a permanent state of being just one single step away from liberal utopia, which we will actually never reach because it's an impossible fantasy. And that's why every single time they have achieved what they wanted to achieve, things get actually worse. And then they quickly move on to blaming something else. So how do we solve this? How do we get rid of this liberal worldview that is holding us back? We need a right-wing counterpart to the liberal revolutions of the 1960s, followed by decades and decades of moving back to the right. And for that you need to understand the ideology which I'm talking about. According to their worldview, the only thing that can't be criticized is the right of the individual to become a hedonistic degenerate. But there are a few things standing in the way of achieving this goal. And those are these evil, oppressive social constructs, like for example, family, gender, borders, which apparently exist for no reason at all, and race and tribalism. I think you slowly begin to see why this way of thinking is flawed. It is completely detached from biological realities. If you pretend that everybody is equal and that every single form of hierarchy is inherently bad, your ideology will keep failing and you won't even be able to comprehend why. And on top of that, it will cause entire societies and whole countries to slowly fade away while their competitors are taking their place. For example, in Chinese schools, talented children get recognized early and then get moved into more elite schools. But in your country, special needs children are allowed to slow down the entire classroom because for whatever reason they believe that everybody can become a brain surgeon. Your country is too afraid to remove dangerous drug addicts from the streets, even though they leave dirty syringes all over children's playgrounds. And if grandma is afraid to go outside after 6, it is only because she did not pay enough taxes to turn this drug addict into a well-adjusted defense attorney. The truth is, you cannot save everybody. No matter how hard you believe in it, there will always be a hard limit defined by reality. And if you don't fix the core issues, your country will keep coming up with fake bullshit solutions like banning kitchen knives or whatever. But let's get back to the liberal worldview. Gender doesn't exist, and if his passport says that he is actually a woman, then he is a woman. And race doesn't exist either, so if a piece of paper says that you are British, then you are British. Why? Because we are all interchangeable human resources who can be moved from one place to another with no identity and no heritage. From their perspective, tribalism also doesn't exist, and if it does, it has to be suppressed at any cost. And surprisingly, this is a point where progressives and conservatives agree. Let's say immigrants come into your country where they live in their own parallel society. They speak their own language, work together, help each other out, and put their own culture above everything else. White conservatives will look at this and complain about how this is bad and not normal, when in reality this is completely normal and natural. It's white people who are retarded. They believe that helping themselves is somehow supremacist, and if they preserve their own culture, it's racist and evil. This is why conservatives and the far right have completely different solutions to this problem. One side wants remigration, simple, but the conservative side believes that no, we will actually assimilate those migrants by turning our entire country into a police state where nobody wants to live because you get 50 years for stealing a pencil. I don't want to live in a low trust police state, but unfortunately this is one of the many realistic outcomes of this culture war. My job is to figure out a survival guide for all of these outcomes, which is the main purpose of my channel. But anyways, tribalism is real. The United States has been trying to fix this for over 400 years, but looking at the way it is working out, I am not sure this is a future I want Europe to go through. Americans have the longest prison sentences out of all Western nations, and you still have to lock your bike. The only thing Americans have going for them and what mitigates the fallout of an ethnically fragmented society is their massive economy. But if you take the economy away, I would not be surprised if they see the same fate as the Balkans or certain Middle Eastern countries. The next liberal viewpoint is that families are just a social construct and that single moms or two dads are just as good for the children as a normal family. And they believe that family is this unimportant optional thing which you should push back to way later in life. Your first priority should actually be your job so you can afford to buy more bullshit. I mean, think about it. They want you to have a job so you can afford daycare for your children. And they want you to have daycare for your children so you have more time for your job. And when you are old, oops, you now regret not spending more time with your family. And if your family has the wrong political views, you just abandon them completely over some irrelevant argument. This behavior is especially pronounced in young women, and if one of them even mentions that she wants children early in life, all her friends will start shaming her and talking her out of it. Oh, you need to have a career first with your own independent money so you can freeze your eggs and travel until you're 35. To make things worse, this way of thinking leads to the creation of laws which further punish and destroy the traditional family. How? So let's say dad is the breadwinner and mom stays at home. Now they get into a custody battle where, surprise, mom wins. And why? Because she spends more time with the children. Yes, because dad is working full-time, you dumbass. That's the whole point of a traditional family. Unfortunately, biases like these have been creeping into the minds of conservatives. Example, they say they want whites to have more children, but when they actually see a white family with tons of children, even if they look rich and educated, you can't imagine how many boomer conservatives are still subconsciously judging them for it. Every time they lose an argument against the progressive, they immediately start seeking approval from a migrant who is also against migrants. Like, why the heck do you even need the approval from someone who is not even indigenous? Do you really think this is how you convince a leftist? Do you really think progressives give a shit? The left will keep wasting your time with such definition bullshit like, define what a German is. They don't want an answer, they want to respond with a prepared copy-paste reply which boils down to calling you a Nazi. But we can defeat all of these bullshit questions simply by defeating the liberalist worldview. Because once society starts viewing the world through a right-wing lens, they would never even ask if becoming a minority in your own country is up to debate. So how do we convince the majority? Easy. Society is shaped by the extremes on each side of the spectrum. And the 60% in the middle just doesn't give a shit about anything. They just go along with the path of least resistance. We only have two priorities. Don't get divided and never ever cave into leftist bullshit. You have to realize that we don't have a choice, but we have a monopoly on reality, and it depends completely on us on whether remigration will happen or not.